Hi, I'm here with the HiFiMan Edition X, which I'm unboxing just today. Now, these are the junior to the HE1000, and this is the version 2. The HE1000, of course, is HiFiMan's flagship planar HiFiMan's planar flagship headphones. And the HEX are a kind of less expensive, easier to drive version of those in a sense. They can be driven more easily out of portables and what have you. They still cost around $1,500. However, so I never even tried the originals. Haven't even tried them, let alone reviewed them. So this would be a first for me, but it's good to get the edition 2. So I'm actually keen to give them a run and see how they compare to the version 2 of the HE1000s, because I do have those here, and they are quite a bit improved from the original. Now, as always, I get to decipher how to open a box. This is a bit different from looks a little bit different from the HE1000 box. Let's just turn the brightness up a little bit so we can see more clearly. These, it's got a slanting cover. So once I work out which way this is supposed to open, looks like I just pull. Indeed. Oh, this is neat. I like this. Much nicer than some of the other ways I've seen to open boxes. We seem to get some instructions in here and some information, and about how the diaphragm works, which you probably can't see because it's a bit bright. If I turn that down, maybe we can have a look. Maybe if I actually held the right way up. So there we go. We have how planar magnetic headphones work. We have some mathematical information about how they work too, which is interesting. Fabian is a very talented materials engineer, so he does know what he's doing in this regard. And yeah, quite a bit of information, which is appreciable. How to get them to fit well, how the pads snap on and off. The pads have changed in the latest versions, I gather. And the HE1000 V2, I've got the original and the V2 of those. They have new pads, which are supposed to make a fair bit of difference. Again, we have the same kind of box as the HE1000s. We have the headphones very nicely secured inside a kind of very stiff frame, fairly stiff frame, which is good. There were always problems, I remember, with the Audeze phones with packing and shipping them. Sometimes they'd break during shipping, so very secure and perfectly shaped packing area is definitely worth it for these kinds of headphones. Here's the new style of cable. The old cable covered with TechFlex, and the new one appears to be, looks identical to the style used in the HE1000 V2. Just having a glance at these, I wonder how many wires there are in there. 1, 2, 3. I count 3 wires. Maybe the same as the HE1000. So that's good if that's the case. No kind of soft nylon or whatever on the outside. In this case, they're just rubbery. But same kind of deal there. You get the same. It looks like you get the same shorter portable cable usually, and longer home cable. I use the shorter one with an adapter. Actually, exactly this setup, because I sit right next to my headphone amplifier. But it's good to have both. And other cables, they use, of course, the 2.5mm TRS plug, which I would wish they were used a bigger plug, ideally, but that's their choice. Bigger plug, of course, means it's easier to make third-party cables. A smaller plug means it's harder. But it's the same as the Oppo PM1s, as far as I know, in terms of pinout. We can use an Oppo PM1. So this is them. I gather this is thinner. We've got metal here, and we have more headband adjustment from the past. Now, this slides really easily now. And your planar drivers. So it's time to plug these in and give them a good listen. So a funny thing about the Edition X's is that I was thinking about them, and they're black and silver, they're around $1,500, they're Edition something. And I was reminded of a similar pair of $1,500 headphones, which had an Edition name, and that was the good old Ultrasone Edition 9s. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or not that they have so many similarities, apart from this being open-backed and more sort of home use, whereas the Ultrasones were, portables, closed-back portables. They, back before the Sennheiser H800s and all the planers came in, they were the $1,500 kind of flagship. And while these are the kind of, I suppose, junior to the HE1000 flagships, there's a lot of similarity in there because the Edition lines were fairly good all-rounders in some respects. I mean, I wouldn't call them so much now. But these are kind of better all-rounders for a lot of music than, say, the HE1000 V2s, which I also have here, and yet more refined than, kind of your lower-end sub $1,000 headphones. But getting into that, it's probably worth going over the ergonomics. They're big headphones. I mean, let me just put them on. This is touching the bottom of my ears, and I can slide them all the way down here before they touch the top of my ears. And they have a lot of space in which they'll move. They have really gigantic cups, very gigantic drivers. If I grab, say behind me, I have a pair of Meze 11s. Now if I can hold it up to a camera at an angle which you can see, look at the difference in cup size. It's just massively different. I mean, they're really, really more like a pair of metallized Stax Lambdas, and I guess there's been some inspiration because you've got the springy headband, although it's metal, not plastic. You've got the head pad, which is kind of, I guess, leather, and you've got the clicky sliders here. In the version 2, there have been some changes. There are more adjustment points. Mine are a bit loose. I mean, I put them on, and you heard that here. They just click a little bit too easily for preference. The cable has also changed. As I said, the unboxing, I got it wrong. This is a 4-wire cable, so 2 each side, whereas the good old HE1000 has a 6-wire cable with 3 each side. They have now, one of the important things is that the point where the headband meets the this is called a gimbal, where the gimbals has changed. Now, in the old ones, I've got an old pair of HE1000s here, one of the originals, and you hear that rattle? Where they attach, it's very, very loose. It's metal on metal. It doesn't feel really classy at all. Of course, the pads have changed compared to the original edition HEX and HE1000. The old pads have these kind of have got felt on the contact side, and these kind of pick up dust like crazy. I don't know how well you can see from the camera, but they've got picked up a lot of dust here, and they don't quite look as classy as they should for on a $3,000 pair of headphones. But with the new ones, and I'll show you with the HE1000s because it's easier to see, they've changed the gimbal and they've put some plastic in there and tightened these up. So you've now got a smooth turn. They now turn smoothly and they don't rattle. And it's the same with the Edition X's, is that they feel now nicely put together. They don't feel like they're loosely put together. So they feel like, especially since they've got the metal body, they feel really classy. They've also made them thinner. One of the issues that came up was that if I just pull the pads off, it'll probably become really clear. So you can see here there's a black ring and a green ring, and you can see the driver. I can even touch the driver, which is a bit dodgy. A bit dangerous, I should say. There was a gap between the black ring and the green ring, and you get some sound bouncing around in there, and that was causing distortion very distinctly on the HE1000s, which, $3,000, you don't want any distortions in your headphones. And they've made this shorter, so now there's no gap. And that has obviously reduced the amount of distortion inside the headphones and improved the sound quality. Now you can see the magnet here. Magnets here are very thin, so they are not heavy. The whole headphones is actually very light considering they've got magnets on both sides. I mean, you can see the silver of the trace on the diaphragm. I can even the diaphragm goes all the way down here and all the way up to the top, so I can actually stick my finger in there and touch it, which is not a good idea. And so I'm going to put this back on because I don't want really to get dust inside them at all. But it's a massive diaphragm, and I think that gives you a more kind of delicate sound with both the HE1000s and the Edition X's. And I guess HE6 owners, like the impact of the HE6, which had a smaller area for the smaller area for your ear. So that's a pretty significant change in the design. Especially compared to other headphones, your regular style headphones will maybe have a bit more impact in the sound. But overall, ergonomics wise, they're like a big pair of metal stacks, and they're not heavy. They're comfortable. They're light, and again, you can put on aftermarket cables if you want, but I found the stock cable was fine. You know, I didn't have any sound issues with that. I've got a few aftermarket cables here. But the nice thing is that they've improved the overall design of the headphones and improved the sound. And so while I didn't hear the originals, I did have the originals of the HE1000 obviously, and the improvements they've made have been significant. So when it came to the sound, I wasn't sure quite where to begin with the Edition X. You know, do I compare it to other headphones? Do I just talk about the sound as they are? You know, where do I begin? And I thought maybe a good start is to compare it to their older brother, the HE1000. Now, the HE1000 with the headphones, I hoped would be the electrostat killer. They'd give me the good enough sound that I would never think again of buying a pair of electrostats. And because, you know, you spend a lot of money on electrostats, you buy 1 amp to power one pair of headphones and 1 pair of headphones to only go with 1 amp, and there's no mixing and matching, you can't plug other stuff in, that's it. But they do have some incredible magic that you can't get with regular headphones. And you know my angels kissing your ears joke, well that's what they give you. They give you this, instead of sound, you know, being pumped into your ear like this, they come from a large flat diaphragm that can move extremely fast, and the extremely tiny sounds, you know, the guy, the player's nostril hairs moving as he breathes in, or you know, the guy right at the back of the studio trying to gently shift on his chair to pass wind, that kind of stupid level of detail you get with electrostats. And the HE1000s came pretty close, but not quite close enough. And with the V2, now they fixed the imaging, now they fixed the little bit of hardness in the treble, they've improved the cable. They I really want to compare to the Stax SR009s, because they come very, very close in that regard. One downside to them in practical terms is that they tend to be very picky about what they're powered by. They're a little bit insensitive, and say for example, you know, this good Audeze NFB1 amp behind me, I'm reviewing that soon. High powered amp, very neutral sound, very good quality, no harshness or grain to speak of, but it sounded a little bit lackluster with the HE1000s. The HE1000s seem to like the big old Studio 6 much better. But that's where we come to the Edition X. Now the Edition X, like the HE1000, have a fairly even and flat sound. So if you're used to the old HiFiMan planers which had, you know, big bass and very, very peaky treble, nothing like that. They're very even sounding. They're not quite as detailed as the HE1000, and they're a little bit grainier, a little bit imperfect, even the V2 version. But they deliver something more of a kind of even, steady sound, but with a bit more impact than the HE1000s do. So, whereas the HE1000s, I said, they sound a bit lackluster out of some gear, especially portable gear, Audeze NFB1 amp sounded fantastic out of this. You know, plenty of punch. You know, of course, out of the Studio 6, out of portable gear too. You know, you wouldn't, the old days you wouldn't think of powering, you know, especially big full-sized headphones out of a portable player. But you know, now you can do it. Grab a FIO X7 and the AM5 module. Yep, no problem. High power, plenty of good sound coming out of that. One of my favourites, the Calyx M, great sounding, very large DAP. It's got a high power amp built in there. Fantastic with the Edition X's. You know, Chord Mojo, Pico Power, Continental version 5, which actually does well with even the HE1000s. Yeah, no problem. Anything like that. And so that makes the Edition X kind of a safer buy. I mean, they're half the price of the HE1000s. You know, ideally, the HE1000s and these would be maybe about a third cheaper. But still, you know, they're... I think for someone who's their first pair of over $1,000 headphones, I'd say yeah, it's actually a very good. It's a good buy. It'll be safe. It'll sound good. If you're looking for more kind of even sound and more detail, then yeah, sure. Where they're challenged again is they're $1,500. $1,500 is kind of into the high end price range. You know, it's your Sennheiser H800 price. It's close to the median of about $1,700 or $1,800, where most high-end headphones are, because they range from about $1,500, you know, up to about $2,200 or $3,000 for the HE1000s, or $4,000 for the Focal Utopias. So if you include the LCD2s, you know, that's $999, between $999 and $4,000. But you know, and compared to other headphones, they're somewhat challenged. The H800s, I'd say, are probably more, will give you more detail, but they're kind of spacious, they're kind of bright. I feel they need a recable to sound their best. So we'll call them a little bit more expensive than they are. HC800S would be a real challenger for them actually, and I wish I could borrow a pair again to compare. I think the HC800S again probably give you more ultimate detail, but I think these will be more entertaining for most people. MrSpeakers Ether Flow. That's again, if you see my video, this is one of my favorite all-around pairs of headphones, and my usual safe high-end recommendation. They power well out of everything. They scale really well. That's one of the original final production prototypes, and I plugged that into a Shit Audio Ragnarok and Yggdrasil rig at SoCal Can Jam, and they scaled up. They got a lot of detail came through them, but they still have a good impact and punch. And so especially with the flow upgrades, they challenge a lot of stuff. But you know, they're a couple of $100 more expensive, and I think that's where they're most challenged. But I don't think the Edition X's are at all a bad buy if you're looking for, especially again, your first pair of high-end headphones, or maybe even someone who's used to high-end headphones. Maybe someone like me. I listen with the HE1000s, but sometimes that excessive delicacy doesn't work on a lot of, say, regular pop music. Or a lot of gear too. So with a lot of other stuff, I might plug in, you know, the Edition X's, and for a bit more relaxed listening, whereas, you know, that fine detail doesn't matter, they work really well. So with all the upgrades they've made, with the changes to the design and everything, they now really feel like a pair of high-end headphones, and I don't really have any major criticisms of them, which are other than minor. Maybe, you know, the headband could be a bit tighter or something like that, and the pads could be made a little bit more evenly. You know, other than a couple of minor things, I think they're a pretty good buy now. And I've really enjoyed listening with them. So, once again, I hope you enjoyed my video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did make it this far through and didn't fall asleep. And do subscribe if you'd like to see more about headphones and portable audio and full-size audio in general. And also, please consider sharing this video on social media and let your friends know about it. And I'll see you online.